Welcome to the Athletic Skills Podcast, the show where we help sports coaches and PE teachers learn how they can impact their athletes' movement and physical development in a fun, practical way. I'm your host, Isaac, founder of Athletic Skills, and in today's episode, we'll be chatting to James Douglas, Head of Athletic Development and Head of Athletics at Norwich School. We discuss his philosophy on S&C, the importance of building relationships with youth athletes, designing programs for different athletic levels, and how competition plays a vital role in youth development. James also shares his insights into incorporating speed and agility training and provides some great tips in how you, as a sports coach or a PE teacher, can incorporate this into your coaching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and I hope you enjoy the show. Now let's get started. This podcast is brought to you by Brendan Chaplin Business Coaching. Brendan guides coaches and service-based entrepreneurs to deliver their best work, build a seven-figure lifestyle and performance business, and create a life of freedom. I started working with Brendan in September 2023, and it's been a great journey since I started working with him in launching my own business, Athletic Skills. Brendan has been fully invested in me and is a great person to chat with, to share ideas, and has vast knowledge and experiences to share also. The reason I picked to work with Brendan is that he has done it himself in launching businesses and has a similar background to myself in S&C and wants to live a life that you want. If you want to speak to Brendan on how he can help create a life of freedom and guide you on that journey, get in touch with him by one of the methods in the show notes and DM him the word coach and he will start the conversation. You won't regret it, and there's a good chance it might just change your life too. Hi everyone, welcome to the Athletic Skills Podcast again, and I'm delighted to have James Douglas on board with me, so thanks James for joining to join.
No problem. I'm looking forward to getting into it.
So if you want to give a bit of background and journey on where you are now, and then we can dive into a bit more details on what you're doing currently.
Yeah. So currently I'm head of athletic development and head of athletics at Norwich School. Previously, I suppose I'll go right back to the start and build forward again. Started fresh out of uni, undergrad in sport and exercise, masters in strength and conditioning, thinking I was ready to beat the world at S&C. I wasn't. It's a very quick thing I started to realize. However, I'd done a lot of placements, a lot of placements in a lot of places. I interned at Ulster Rugby for near enough 5 years. From there, I then got my first sports science gig at StatSport, where I was seconded out Irish Women's Rugby. I was with Irish Women's Rugby for near enough a full year as their sports scientist / S&C. And then from there, I got my gig in Norwich, amongst a couple of other side gigs that I had going on. So yeah, and I suppose apart from that, it's been a long road. That's probably the past 10 years summed up in the space of 60 seconds. But I'm now where I am in Norwich, been here for 2.5 years and love every minute of it.
And you're saying you love every minute of it. What's taking your passion around S&C in general and youth S&C? Why are you so passionate in this area?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in strength and conditioning for all kinds of athletes. I previously, before I got into any of this, was a pathway athlete myself, and had a really rough experience with an S&C coach that really put my tangent on. I never want another kid to be coached like that. And I guess at the base level, I'm a sports coach that is really passionate about making sure that the athlete experience is something that they thrive in and not feel like they're targeted or they're getting really like unconstructive feedback as such. So that kind of set me on a very specific tangent in terms of coaching. And then I've realised that I've just got a mega love for anything strength and conditioning, speed and agility, whatever you want to call it. And based on my experience, I thought, you know what, that's the area I want to target. And then from there, having been in professional sport for so long, it got to the point where I thought there's absolutely no reason why all kinds of youth athletes shouldn't be exposed to what professional environments get. And how good the coaching is there, as well as them being able to moderate some of the behaviours that you see in those professional environments, and trying to manifest that at a school is very different and looks very different across the board. But you can do it based on the amount of effort you're willing to give to it.
That's interesting. And you've used your frustrations from being an athlete yourself and then transferring that to being a coach, and you can see both sides of the story and how an athlete feels, and from a coach perspective as well, which is a nice skill to have, I guess, as an S&C coach.
Yeah, I think if anything, it makes you quite relatable to the kid that you coach or any athlete that you coach. I do a little bit of work outside of Norwich School with the local Premiership netball club, Norfolk United, and even the girls that play in the Prem team there. They all have had a similar kind of experience where they might have been in a Saracens Miles pathway, got booted out of it, and it just makes you very relatable. It gives you a lot. It's that thing of having shared experience with your athletes actually helps to build the coach-athlete relationship and bond.
So it's from your experience, what kind of key qualities make a good S&C coach in your eyes, or a good coach in general, like you mentioned?
Yeah, I guess one has got to be that relatability piece that I just mentioned around you have to have a base level of you're coaching another human. You have to be able to sit and have a conversation and have a bit of banter. I think that's one thing that kind of gets overlooked by a lot of the world of S&C, and that everyone's mega serious and they all want to be the next big S&C coach is going to go on to be the senior S&C or head of performance at Man United, and they're great down the line, no messing, any of that. And I think that kind of, it's a very kind of narrow-minded attitude to it. The majority of my kids that come into the gym, they want to talk about Love Island that was on last night, or they want to talk about the sport that's been going on at the minute, European athletics or whatever, the T20 World Cup that's on. I think so. You've got to have that relatability piece. You've then got to have a fairly hard-nosed approach on top of that. That's where that then layers it, in the sense that for myself, I've got a very strong coaching philosophy around my training principles and how that's all periodized across a year and how that looked in a curriculum in a school, all that kind of stuff. And that's where you can be fairly rigid. But that's all kind of background stuff. So every time the athlete walks in the gym, they get a hello, a fist bump, how's it going? Anything news going on today? All that kind of stuff. And that kind of, I suppose, the coaches that I see that are good at that are the coaches that have loads of coaching experience across loads of different sports. And I actually find that sports coaches generally tend to be a lot better at it than S&C coaches, like pure S&C coaches. People that went straight into uni, S&C, 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 and only ever done it in one sport, so like football, where they've been in a gym and they've never left the gym. Whereas, see a sport, you go down to your local football pitch every Saturday or go down to your local cricket oval, you see the coach. Coach is there having a bit of banter with their athletes, and that's, you are allowed to do that. I think that's something that we skip over. But that is what creates massive buy-in into your programs. That's what brings the athlete back, is them knowing that they've got that shared relationship of coach-athlete, but they can also have that connection of, on a day-to-day, give an example, we had a boy in lower sixth who's really struggling academically, like didn't get the grades he wanted, standing in tears, and knows that he can come and sit in the sports department and talk to his head of S&C, talk to his head of rugby about that experience. And it doesn't have to be any way related to his sport. That's important to have that. So it's got to be a relationship building thing, buy-in, something around like relatability, but then also that hard-nosed, principles-driven approach to getting the best out of your athletes.
If you could have the best program, or technically the best program, but if the athlete doesn't buy in or trust you, then the program's worthless, really, isn't it? And so building that relatability and that trust is a key factor into it, around, especially youth athletes as well.
Completely. And they're probably more socially attuned, in the sense that you could walk into a gym full of adults and they'll all go, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll do this, and then got to get out. The kids, because they're still learning their way into being adults, they seek social connection. Like, it's really important at this age that you are able to then have a bit of back and forth with them. And I guess that thing of, to get instantaneous buy-in, the easiest thing to do is make them laugh, because then they're like, oh, he's cool. That actually worked. But then getting to actually know your kids. For example, that kid I was talking about with the exam, he lives literally about an hour and 20 minutes from school. So he spends the majority of his day outside of school traveling. So he can't actually get that much work done. So therefore, how does that affect his exams? How does that affect his mood? That then affects his sport. It's about building the bigger picture and having that broad but quite deep knowledge of this athlete has that, this athlete has that on. But at the end of the day, we're still here to do something. And they get that as well.
And also, it depends what music you put on in the gym as well. That's a big factor.
Oh, jeez, yeah. Believe me, a bit of Nicki Minaj will always get anybody going. No doubt about that.
So, did you want to say you've been at Norwich School for about 2.5 years now? Do you just want to talk through what your role entails of being a head of athletic development and also head of athletics as well?
Yeah. So my predominant role here is head of athletic development. So that basically like your head of S&C and any academy. I dare say that one thing that doesn't get realised enough across the body of S&C is how big a program you can have in a school, in the sense that we cover every week probably 3/4 of the school body here. The school body is near enough 1,200 pupils. So you think about how many kids you would have in an academy at those age groups. It's probably a bigger amount of coaching that you do every week in comparison to an elite performance academy. The level of athlete obviously varies massively, but we still have the very top end, like your boys in Leicester Tigers or your girls that are in Pathway County Cricket, all of those kind of things. We also have a couple of specialised individual sports and how all those top end athletes filter into our sports scholarship program, where I think we have something like 128 pupils on our sports scholarship program. That is our tip of the spear as such, and how they get catered for across the week looks very different to the rest of the Gen Pop in school. But that runs the whole way throughout the year in terms of my role. They then switch between their sports every single term, all of that kind of stuff. That all falls under that. And then also my support then into our main sport programs like our rugby or hockey or netball, all of that stuff, and how we then adapt and put S&C principles and athletic development principles into those sports to benefit the pupil performance. And then come the summer term, I also pick up head of athletics, which is quite a nice change for me. It gets me out of the gym a little bit more and puts me on the track. And I suppose my real passion within S&C is speed and agility. It's the stuff that I wake up every day and I'm like, yeah, that gets me going. I want to learn more about that stuff, how that filters into the game. I guess the thing with athletics is it's essentially athletic development, but on a track. So you're still coaching speed, power, all of those kind of characteristics. You're still doing jumping, you're still doing sprinting. It all looks the same, just doing it into a pit or on the grass when you throw a shot put, all of those kind of things. So it's quite nice to be able to segue my job into that. And I guess that's probably where our athletics program has changed a little bit, in the sense that we look at developing athletes by developing core physical competencies, instead of we have athletes that are good cricketers, and because they're good cricketers, they can throw a javelin really far. Do you know what I mean? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create homegrown proper athletes through our athletics program. We're not going around the rest of our main sports and going, actually, we're just going to take you because you're one of the best athletes in the school, or we'll take you because you're going to win that competition for us. Not really about that. That's not long-term athletic development. Long-term athletic development is taking an athlete that's not very good at something, giving them all the skills and all the physical capabilities to be good at that thing, and then coaching them how to do it. That's probably a better way to look at it.
So before we dive into a bit more about speed and agility, which is one of your main passions, I just want to talk about how you cater for different individuals. So like you mentioned, you might have a really high-level athlete who's in the academy, but you also might have a student who really isn't into fitness or really isn't into sports. So how might you cater your sessions to cater for those two different people?
Yeah, so I'll do the easier one, which is the high-performing athlete first. For the majority of our high performers, they're all within an academy, and they are probably all in our sports scholarship program. Our sports scholarship program is quite nice in the sense that what it allows us to do with pupils literally from year 8 to or year 7 right through until year 14 is that they get an additional gym session outside of their academic timetable. So they, for year 7 through to year 10, they're let out of class once per week to come and do a gym session instead of being in that class. Now the class changes every week, so they only miss that class once in a term, and therefore they never fall behind with it. In those sessions, then that's whenever we can be a bit more specific around, okay, these pupils are particularly good at cricket, at rugby, at hockey, and then we say, okay, out of those programs, then look, and at a base level, they all probably look pretty similar at those age groups. However, then you can add in your little bits of specificity to them, like robustness around neck and shoulders for rugby, robustness around lower back and shoulders for cricket, robustness around hamstrings and all that kind of stuff for those younger age groups, because those are really easy tick boxes to put into a program, but it allows them to feel like it's being specialized to them. Then whenever you get up into sixth form, that's whenever you're very like specific, okay, rugby, we do rugby 7s then in the second term, so we can actually have probably a good near enough 6 months of periodized programming. Actually probably more, it's probably about 7.5, 8 months, because you've got pre-season as well. So by the time you actually add that up, you could near enough have a full year periodized program for all of your rugby players. And that's not to say that they'll never play another main sport. That just means that they're going to stay on that program because the sport they want to pursue professionally is rugby, for example. We do the same for our hockey players. We do the same for our cricketers, our netballers, everything. So it's a fairly easy process at that level, because what you're looking at is you're looking at elite performance data that it's been published, peer reviewed, all that stuff, needs analysis, that, and then decide, okay, so what are the key capabilities that our netballers need to have? Okay, so 50% of the time they're going to land on one leg, so their program has to have a lot of single leg strength work, a lot of single leg robustness around their groins, around their knees, all of that kind of jazz in it. Same for and again, it's just a needs analysis of every sport, okay, and then how does that apply up and drip feed down into their program? How does that drip feed into their periodization across the year? And I guess that's probably one thing that coaches still haven't, probably a lot more sports coaches still haven't got the hang of, is that sports coaches think of periodization, they think of a really rigid periodization plan. But we can be a lot more agile than that, and I think there's a little bit of education to do there, in the sense of, based on when competition cycle, we can then say, okay, they're going to do 2 weeks of max strength in the middle of their in season, because they've got 4 weeks where they go 2 weeks before half term, no competitions. They have half term where they have a week off, and then they have another week where they would be like, all right, okay, we're back into competition again. So you could actually get a good drop of like max strength training into that. And that allows you to then keep your strength maintenance across the season. Do you know what I mean? But then that's it, that week that they would come back after half term where they're back into competition, that looks very different in the sense that it might be a speed strength week or something along those lines. So that's probably the elite athlete end. Our Gen Pop then is very different. So our Gen Pop come in, they're only allowed to filter into extracurricular time. So we have 2 junior slots, 2 inter slots, 2 senior slots across the week, whether that's lunchtime, before school, after school. They come in, the program is on the board for them, and it is as simple as push, pull, vertical, horizontal, lower hinge, squat, horizontal, vertical, all of those things, plyometric, vertical, horizontal, and then we give them like an option-based workout with like sets and reps to it. So if they choose squat jump as their plyometric A, and they choose a pogo as their plyometric B, the rep range that we give them and the sets will be appropriate to that exercise. And then that allows them to develop that skill of, all right, okay, if I walk into any gym, I can do this because I know I need to have that in my program, that in my program, that in my program. But that's equipping those people for whenever they leave school and then go into real life and go into any gym, like the majority of our kids go to pure gym anyway from the age of 16. So it's a good thing for them to be able to be exposed at early years in school to developing their own program and then being like, I can do that every time I go to the gym. So that's probably the difference. And in that sense, it's a little more educational at the other end of school, where they need to learn how to develop a program for themselves. Whereas the other ones, they generally tend to know what they need in their program. They just need to come in and do it with some proper intensity and volume.
And like you mentioned, if that Gen Pop population, it's more education than actually what they're doing in the gym necessarily. So learning for what they're doing at pure gym or outside of their life and for later life, and learning the importance of health and fitness for their later life, really.
Completely. And we've currently at Norwich, we don't have a PE curriculum. However, we're moving to a PE model for September, and part of that model is looking at some form of running, so cross country, running on the track, going for a park run, all that kind of stuff. Some form of like paddle sports, a paddle board, like a kayak, like a canoe, all that kind of stuff. Some form of like athletic development in the gym, but it's essentially life skills that they can continue to stay fit with whenever they leave school.
And then the key thing is making it fun and enjoyable, and then especially if it's extracurricular activities, so they're coming back next week if it isn't a requirement for them anyway.
Yeah, completely. And I think based on the type of kids that we get coming to those sessions, we generally tend to find that they always bring a friend. For every one, you probably get two, and for every two, you might get three if you then make it fun. So the following week, there'll be three of them come back. Okay, you three, because you're friends, you can all go and stand in the same rack and do all your gym session in there. Or we'll have like broad jumps will be in it as a plyometry exercise. Okay, make that a competition. Choose a line in the gym, jump from that line, put a cone down. Okay, try and beat your friends. So all that kind of stuff. And I think that's probably one thing that in schools in general at the minute, especially in the UK, is being scathed over, in the sense that we're trying to create a really nice, safe, comfortable environment that doesn't have any form of competition. And I think that competition is a main life stay, whether you're interviewing for a job, whether you're trying to hoover the house in a specific amount of time to get out the door for your dinner or whatever, all of those things, you have to have some form of level of, I want to compete against someone. And that's a really good life skill to have. And the kids that come into those extracurricular sessions that aren't necessarily interested in a major sport, that's where they're actually going to learn those things. So it's quite important that we realise that and then implement that into their sessions.
And I agree, yeah, especially around in youth athletes and youth sport, there's a lot of participation trophies, and where everyone perceives that everyone's a winner, but like you mentioned, for later life, it needs to be win or lose, especially if you don't play team sports. You won't naturally learn around that within school necessarily, unless you have these competitions, like you mentioned. So,
completely.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
I think you're completely right. And like, the more I think about it, but you always like, you go to all these coaching conferences and they're like, oh, physical education and PE and sport was so much bigger 60 years ago. And the reason that is because 60 years ago, people actually cared about winning and losing. And not only that, but it was really important to be fit and healthy during those times. And at the minute, in this soft culture of everybody wants to be happy and all of that, people lose that bit of grittiness, drive, to want to then look after themselves. And I think it's important to model that as a coach. For example, I'm into my triathlons. I've previously been a semi-professional rugby player, like all of those little bits. I still have that competitive drive. Even as a coach, I'll stand on the side of the pitch and be like, come on, like all of those things. So to model it for the kids, even in the gym, I'll walk around the gym some weeks and challenge kids to certain things. So one of the big ones I love to do is a handstand competition, because they don't think that 6'3" and 120 kilos can do a handstand. Then they get out handstanding and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to handstand for the rest of this term until I beat you. Do you know, that's really important.
So with your role around head of athletic development and head of athletics, imagine you're not working on your own. There's a lot of communication with the PE teachers, with other staff as well, around firstly educating them on what you're doing, but also how they could interlink and help you out within their sessions as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that's massive with this is like is obviously your curriculum design and session planning. And I'll give a really good example of how we do it here in terms of our rugby. Yes, I can coach rugby, but that's not my capacity while I'm there. My capacity while I'm at rugby is to coach attacking and defensive speed and agility. So movement skills around that, and then how that links into their session that day. So the rugby curriculum looks like this. Kick battle, which is like kicking and kick chase, and then also counter attack, in and out of possession, with in terms of close quarters, the breakdown, and then the last one is what's the last one? Anyway, I'll come back to the last one. The how that then looks for me. So if we take those three, so the breakdown, a physical capacity that I can then coach those kids is how to wrestle. Because that's really important, is how you manipulate someone else's body to then give you success at the breakdown every time you go there. Kick chase, in and out, kick chase and counter attack. They're going to be doing a lot of max velocity running in their actual game rotation of that day. So whenever they then come to me, what am I going to teach them? I'm going to probably teach them something that's less physically demanding, but I'm going to look at acceleration technique, max velocity technique. We might do some shorter type accelerations from different positions, like a forward that's just got up off the ground. The 10's already kicked the ball. They need to then be able to change their body to then make that acceleration. Those kind of things. The in and out of possession one, then that's probably the most important one in close quarters. So you're talking around about things as cutting, S running, crossover steps, backpedaling, and that's probably, if you broke those four down, there's 2 attacking skills, cutting and S running, 2 defensive skills, crossover steps, shuffle or backpedal, whichever one you want. But those are really important, and to be able to then break that down into your session plan and how that looks for an athletic development coach sport is quite important. So session plan is that you're going to have two mini teams. They're going to play a game on the pitch. You're going to have 2 mini teams. One of them's going to be with an actual rugby coach doing a skill like tackle tech on the bag. The other mini team's going to be with the AF Dev coach doing how to then get to position to make the tackle. For example, I'll see that from the rugby coach. I'll then get that, and then I'll go, okay, what's my philosophy around planning? My philosophy around planning is skill, drill, open scenario. Okay, so what's the skill? Crossover step. How can we practice that? I'm going to put the athlete in a band. I'm going to make them crossover step against really heavy resistance, so they have to think about what their body does while they do the movement. They're going to take it out, and they're going to do a crossover step race against a partner over 10 meters. Okay, so it's a similar distance to what they might have to cover in the game. They're going to race against someone, so they'll see the cognitive perceptual manner of it. Okay, great. Then whenever we go into the open chaos bit, we then turn around and we go, okay, 1v1, you're going to try and score down here. You're going to try and defend. Okay, but it's just a touch on the hips. And what we're trying to think about is you're going to get your body right in front of the other body. Are you given no coaching cues on the actual crossover step? You just watch the drill and see if they do it. And then you say, okay, how did you move to get to the tackle there? And they stand there and they think about it. They go, well, I just ran sideways. How did you run sideways? My right leg went over my left leg. So you crossover step. Great, that's good. Those are really important things to be able to do. And then that in itself creates buy-in, because they're like, oh, he actually knows what he's talking about. How we then back that up, whenever you do video review with any team, the S&C coach should be present in any video review you ever do, because they will then point out skills and be like, look at everyone will be focusing on the ball here, and I'll be like, okay, but look at this player. Look what he's doing with his body to make sure he's ready to then go and do the next thing. And that's what then breeds success through the program, in the sense that they don't realize they're doing it, but because they've been given the skills, put through drills on it, and then shown how to do it in a chaos scenario, whenever they go into the game, they're fully equipped then to do that. So even little things for hockey or cricket, how to run properly with an implement in your hand is massively different as to how to run normally without anything in your hands. All of those kind of little bits. That, I think those are probably some of the major things I see with it. The next kind of level to that is in your chaos scenarios as an AF dev coach, what you're trying to do is create realistic cognitive perceptual demands as to what they'll get in the sport. So that's quite a tough skill to be able to do. So like some of the things I've seen, one of the S&C coaches, Pete Burridge at Bristol Bears, he's massive on his speed and agility. One of the coolest things I ever seen was that he got his athletes in there in with the seniors to wear a GoPro whilst doing their speed and agility sessions. So they're actively doing the skills, but he is able to then see what they see. So then they can talk through it together. Okay, so at that moment in time, what did you think? I thought, there's the gap. I want to get through that gap. Okay, how did you move your body to get there? That's whenever you bring in the other video, which is the video of the whole session. You say, oh, look, you made a massive cut off your right foot, squared up off your left, went through the gap, beat the defender. So that's quite important, be able to coach those things and hear what, more so about us listening to the athlete instead of us telling them what to do in those scenarios, because they're probably right. It's just an execution error that might make them fail at that scenario. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's quite powerful that you say from an S&C point of view, having that knowledge of the sport and also being involved in those conversations is really useful, but could be on the flip side that a sports coach or a PE teacher could have that knowledge of an S&C and then be able to see that perspective as well. So being able to see problems or analyze videos in different ways can be really helpful in an athlete's development and providing some advice.
Massively. And even you think of like girls' sports like netball, with that thing of the 60% of the time they land on one leg. Well, actually, 60% of the time of the 60% of that time, whenever they land on one leg, they're probably getting pushed as well. So how does that then affect them whenever they land? Their center of mass is outside the limb that they land on. What happens? Those things are really important. Those things are really important to how the athlete then has that success during the game. If they go to catch a ball above a defender, one-handed, body turned, and then they get a push. Okay, so how have they landed? Have they landed safe? Have they landed in knee valgus? Because if they land in knee valgus with more stuff around ACLs, all of those little bits. And that's one thing sports coaches are particularly good at, is the stuff around, oh, all my injuries in my sport are going to be this. They know that. That's fine. But then how does that filter into your athletic development across the school? Well, it means that in the summer term, your rugby players and your netballers should probably be doing some form of high-speed running to make sure that their hamstrings are strong, they've got good quality around their calves and their Achilles, all of that kind of stuff. So can they come and do athletic? Yeah, they can. But what if they're a good cricketer? Okay, so then we need to think about our cricketers and how they then get all of their high intensity running done. A lot of bowlers run in from miles away, so they're doing an acceleration every time they run in. They run in 20 times in a game. There's 20 meters as such. Do you know what I mean? So it's quite important that we have that depth of thought, even in a school, where a lot of people are like, they're going to go to cricket and I'm going bowl. How many overs did they bowl? How many balls have they bowled? What's their action when they bowl? Do they bowl through their chest? Do they bowl through their shoulders? All of those little bits, that plays into each individual athlete in the program, especially at your top end, like our sports scholars. So yeah,
there's a lot of different stakeholders in an athlete's development. S&C and yourself at a school is just one of them. So it's working with each individual and managing as well what that athlete is doing outside of sport, exam season, stress with family stuff, social stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there that could vary on what a program could entail.
100%. And like here at Norwich, where we're an academically selective school and kids care about the grades they get, they also want to be involved in as much co-curricular as possible with the likes of performing arts, art and design, all of those kind of things, on top of them playing all main sports every single term. And then the commitment of having additional programs outside of school, additional sports outside of school, all of those things play into their workload. That's probably the last little bit of what my job looks like, is how do we then equip those athletes to succeed under that amount of physical stress? And how does that then look for their loading across a week? How does it look across a month, a year? all of those bits. Is there a way that we can give them some form of routine or something that they can lead themselves at home that means that they'll get good quality sleep every night, that means that they'll come in flexible because they'll have stretched properly and all those little bits. That makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and having done some work in a school as well, I was sometimes found that gym session, that 20-minute, 30-minute gym session is quite a good mental break for that athlete or that student to get away from exams, release some stress and so on. So providing a good space for that, even if that athlete might not do the perfect program, they're still going through something to get them away from, especially around this exam season at the moment.
Completely, dude. Completely.
Last bit, because I appreciate we've been talking for a while now, is have you got any tips for a sports coach or a PE teacher who wants to start working on speed and agility with their athletes, and where would you maybe start in trying to implement some changes within this area?
A couple of bits. First thing, the 120 kg coach isn't going to demo better than the sprinter that goes to the track 3 times a week. Yeah. So use that resource. That's a really easy resource to use, but then be able to talk through what you're saying. That's important. So, for example, whenever I was at Ulster Rugby, we had a guy that was running sub 11 seconds in the 100 for Team Ireland. He done every single speed and agility demo that we could do, because there's no point in me showing them what good looks like when he is actually good. But I have a very thorough understanding of what's his ground contact look like, what's his thigh velocities look like, how's his posture, what all of those little bits. And those are what you need to cue for your other athletes, because they're the bits they understand. The last little bit that I've got is just chuck yourself into as many sports as possible and go and watch and learn and see what other athletes do.
No, I agree. And just exposing to multi-sports is a big one, rather than moving the same way. Is there any way, if anyone's got any questions, in getting in touch with you on anything around the speed and agility or your role at Norwich School? And have you got anything coming up as well, your side?
Yeah, just a couple of little bits. I'm at the LTAD conference on Friday. If anybody wants to reach out, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. I've just launched a new Instagram page called Sprint Performance UK. Go and give that a follow. And yeah, always open to chat and listen. I really need to go because there's a GCSE class that needs into the room that I'm in. But yeah, I'm more than happy to reach out and chat to anyone.
Well, thanks, James, and appreciate your time. And I'll let you go before that class comes and runs in.
Super. Thanks for it. Chat to you soon.
See you soon, mate. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Athletic Skills Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our discussion and found it helpful in learning more about impacting your youth athletes' movement and physical development. If you did enjoy this episode, please take a moment to give us a like, subscribe and share to any other coaches or teachers that you think it may help. Also, if you have any feedback or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us on social media or on the email in the description. And we'll be more than happy to try and tackle those challenges you are facing as a sports coach or a PE teacher. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. I look forward to speaking to you soon.